Hello and welcome to another episode of KARE 11 on the Record. I'm political reporter Danny Spiewak. Primary day is almost here, and one of the key races this coming week is going to be the DFL battle for U.S. Senate. Senator Bernie Sanders has gotten heavily involved in the race. We got a chance to talk with him earlier this week. Well, I'm pleased to be joined now by Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders. Senator, thank you so much for taking some time off the Senate floor. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
So we're just days away from the Minnesota primary, and you've been heavily involved in supporting Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan in her race for the Democratic nomination for U.S. Senate. Why did you decide to throw your support behind the Lieutenant Governor here?
I'll tell you why. I mean, I think in Vermont, in Michigan, in Minnesota, and all over this country, people understand that our economy is rigged. What they are experiencing is that ordinary people can't afford groceries, they can't afford health care, they can't afford housing. They're struggling. And meanwhile, the very richest people in this country have never, ever had it so good. We have more income and wealth inequality today than we've ever had. And the reason that I am supporting Peggy is that we need people in Washington, D.C., in the Senate, who are prepared, and it's not easy, to take on the billionaire class and their greed and fight for an economy that works for all of us and not just the people on top. And one of the other reasons that I'm supporting Peggy is she understands that the healthcare system that we have is broken and that we need to do what every other major country on earth does, guarantee healthcare to every man, woman, and child as a right through a Medicare for all healthcare program. So those are some of the reasons as to why I'm supporting Peggy.
The Lieutenant Governor's opponent in the primary, Congresswoman Angie Craig, has been running ads basically of Republicans saying that they'd rather run against Flanagan. Do you believe that the Lieutenant Governor can win a statewide race in Minnesota?
Oh, absolutely, I do. I mean, I think that people know that the status quo and establishment policies just are not working. I mean, that's just, everybody knows that. And we need to do something that has not been done in recent history and have the guts to say to the people on top, we're going to take on your greed. You cannot have it all. Yes, if you're a billionaire, you're going to have to pay more in taxes so that we can provide child care to all of the kids in this country. Yes, healthcare is a human right. And by the way, no, we should not be spending billions of dollars supporting the extremist government, Netanyahu government in Israel, which is doing terrible things to the Palestinian people. We need a change in priorities. We need a government that stands up for working families who are struggling and takes on the billionaire class. I think that message will win in Minnesota, wins in Vermont, wins all over this country.
One of the most politically potent issues in Minnesota right now is fraud. Do you believe the Lieutenant Governor has adequately addressed that issue on the campaign trail?
I think she has. And I think, when you look at fraud, my God, I find it amazing that Republican colleagues even dare to use that word, given what's going on in Washington, D.C. right now. You have a president who is not only an authoritarian, and the people of Minnesota have experienced that authoritarianism with ICE, but you also have somebody who's a kleptocrat. This guy, since he's been president, has seen his family's wealth increase by $2 billion. Talk about fraud.
Another candidate that you backed this week, Abdul El Sayed in Michigan, won a very close race in that primary. What do you think that signals about the Democratic Party right now?
Well, I think like Peggy's, and I think we have to understand that Abdul was running, if my memory is correct, 9-1 in super PAC money against them. All right, 9-1. I think Peggy is at 7-1. So the question that we have got to ask ourselves, the very simple question is, why are these billionaire-funded super PACs spending so much money trying to defeat El Sayed in Michigan and Peggy Flanagan in Minnesota? What are they afraid of? And clearly what they are afraid of is that candidates like Peggy are going to have the guts to say, you know what, you guys are going to have to start paying your fair share of taxes. If you're in the insurance company and the drug companies, you're going to have to stop ripping off the American people. Yes, we need child care for all of our kids. So I think what you saw in Michigan and exactly the same thing in Minnesota, big money interests are spending huge amounts of money trying to defeat candidates who stand up for the working class of this country, as is Peggy Flanagan.
Senator, it was reported a couple of weeks ago that you and the House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries had a somewhat tense call just over your involvement in Democratic primaries. Are you risking Democratic majorities in November by getting involved in these primaries?
Not at all. I mean, I think the candidates that we are supporting are not only right on the policy issues in the sense that they are standing up for working families and are prepared to take on the oligarchs. I think that's the right thing to do at this very dangerous moment in American history. But I think politically, what you're seeing, and I got to tell you, all over the country, people are just frustrated with the Republican Party and Trump. They are frustrated with the Democratic leadership. They want change. They want change. They know the system is not working. And I think people like Peggy, who understand that, is going to be able to generate excitement, not just in the Democratic base, among independents. I think you're going to see a lot of young people coming out voting for Peggy Flanagan because they're looking at the future. And they're saying, you know what, everything being equal, my standard of living is going to be lower than my parents. What's that about? We need change. And by the way, I think you're going to see more than a few Republicans who understand that we don't need a United States senator in the general election who's going to be a big pal of Donald Trump.
Minnesota is one of those states among many that could decide control of the Senate in November. Maine is another one. With what happened with Graham Plattner, why did you and others support Graham Plattner in Maine for so long until the very end?
Well, we ended our support for Graham Plattner after very serious accusations were made, period. End of discussion. Accusations were made. They seem to be possibly credible. And I did, and others as well, ceased our support.
Even with all of the previous reporting that has been done about the tattoo and other mistreatment of women,
look,
why did it take till the very end?
Tattoo. Accusations are one thing. All right. When a serious accusation came out regarding sexual assault, I and virtually all of the people who were supporting Plattner ceased to support him, and he ended his campaign, period. But right now, what we're worried about is figuring out how we can develop a political movement which has the strength to take on the oligarchs in this country who have extraordinary wealth and extraordinary power, and try to create an economy finally that works for all of us, not just the few.
Senator, do you believe Israel is going to be a wedge issue for the Democratic Party this cycle?
I wouldn't use it as a wedge issue. I mean, you have to make a decision. At a time when this country faces so many enormous problems in healthcare, in education, in housing, in childcare, should we be spending billions and billions of dollars supporting a right-wing extremist government in Israel, the Netanyahu government, that has, according to many people, including myself, committed genocide against the Palestinian people? Israel had a right to defend itself against Hamas's horrible attack, but they did not have the right to go to war against the entire Palestinian people, kill 75,000, injure over 160,000, and wipe out virtually their entire infrastructure. That is not right. American taxpayer dollars should not, in my view, be going to that purpose.
Senator, I know we're running out of time, but my last question is, since you first ran for president in 2016, do you believe the Democratic Party has changed or that the Democratic electorate has changed?
I don't think it's a question. I think what is changing is the American people are catching on that we need to have a political party that is not dominated by wealthy campaign contributors, but is dominated by working class people, young people, people of color, people who today are struggling and who want change. That is the transformation that we are seeing in the Democratic Party. And that is, by the way, why progressives have been winning elections from New York City to California and a lot of states in between in the last number of months.
All right, Senator Bernie Sanders, thank you so much for taking some time on KARE 11. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Welcome back. This past week was Farmfest in western Minnesota, where we saw top political candidates for governor and U.S. Senate duke it out on stage ahead of Tuesday's primary. Farmfest is a Minnesota political tradition unlike any other.
Great to see.
This Farmfest gubernatorial debate marked the first time that presumptive DFL candidate Senator Amy Klobuchar has shared a stage with her potential Republican challengers.
I love Farmfest.
Without a serious primary challenge, Klobuchar is already positioning herself for the general election in November.
When you put your trust in me, I'm going to go ahead and do the work for you because I've been there with you through good times and bad.
Meanwhile, the three Republicans tailored their message to the GOP voters ahead of next week's primary. House Speaker Lisa Damith touts her experience as the state's top elected Republican.
It is important to me that everyone in Minnesota, all parts of our state, has the opportunities to succeed. And what will make that happen is an absolute culture change.
Meanwhile, MyPillow founder Mike Lindell faces active opposition from the state GOP.
And my story speaks for itself.
But he carries an endorsement from President Trump.
Well, I know a guy. I have an advantage over everyone up here. I can call up and work with the President of the United States.
Lastly, businessman Kendall Qualls boasts the endorsement of the Minnesota GOP after winning over party delegates.
The Metro has always been the Achilles heel for us as Republicans. I can help get us elected without compromising our conservative values. I've been doing it in my entire life.
The four candidates agreed on many issues, like fewer regulations on agriculture and ending fraud. But differences between Klobuchar and the Republicans emerged on issues like ICE and the One Big Beautiful Bill.
We do not need a governor who is a rubber stamp of Donald Trump.
You're the backbone of this country, whether we like it or not. Your work, your role, your fundamental role in this country justifies itself. Yes. Your work justifies itself, but the question is, do you believe that? And I'm just going to take a second to say something unrelated to beef prices, because we're running for United States Senate. Everybody talks about how politics don't work in this country. We want to see things change, but we vote in the incumbents 95% of the time. Incumbent, recruited by the incumbents. When you start voting in outsiders, you have a shot in hell of actually changing something. And until that becomes a fundamental part of our culture, you can expect the exact same set of BS answers that get you none of the results you are interested in.
I wasn't recruited to run for anything. I've been thinking about this for years. And
please show some respect.
That's nice. I've thought about this for years, and every candidate on this stage knows what it takes and how hard this is. Why would I choose to put myself, my family, on the line this way? Everyone goes through this stuff, and you know why I made that choice? So I could represent Minnesota better. We have not had great representations here in the state in St. Paul. Certainly they've let us down with the frauds. Certainly they have. And are we going to teach our kids? I have two, 20 and 17. Are we going to teach them that it's okay to allow fraud, to embarrass our taxpayers, to steal from the people who actually need it, and to hollow out programs because some people wanted your cash?
It was clear on the stage that I'm the only person on that stage with the experience to get going on day one. I've been the head of the Ag Committee for a session of Congress, but I've been on the committee for 8 years. And so I've been fighting for working families who need access to help like SNAP, as well as family farmers for the last 8 years. So really pleased with how it went on the stage today.
What's this next 6 days going to look like for you? It's obviously crunch time.
Yeah, a lot of door knocks, a lot of phone banks, just getting out the vote. I mean, we're at the point now where we're staring down, August 11th, and so we've got to get every voter out to make sure that they vote in this August 11th primary. And, what we saw on the stage today from Republicans is that no matter who wins that primary, it's going to be another rubber stamp for Donald Trump. And so we need a U.S. Senator who understands when to make a fist and fight the Trump administration, but also when to extend a hand and work across the aisle on on policies like year-round E15.
I thought it was good. This is an opportunity, the first opportunity for, Democrats and Republicans to be together. And, it's clear to me that issues, regarding agriculture should be bipartisan issues. And I think we had a good conversation today.
Did you find it to be unique? Just so you're obviously running in a heated primary, but you had Republicans there as well. Were you kind of not fighting on both fronts, but was it a unique dynamic to have all that at play?
I will call it interesting in the most Minnesotan way possible. But what I can tell you, is, Congresswoman Craig and I, there's a lot that we agreed on, and I think, that's a good thing and an opportunity. I think that, our Republican opponents are going to have a hard time, especially in this moment with, all of the decisions that have been made by the Trump administrations that has just caused incredible instability for farmers all across Minnesota. And I think you heard a little bit about that, today.
We're also monitoring developments in Wisconsin, which has a primary on Tuesday. And right now, the leading candidate for Democratic governor is Democratic Socialist Francesca Hong. I am joined now by Mike Wagner. He is our eyes and ears on the ground in Wisconsin, University of Wisconsin, journalism program director and political expert in that state. Mike, thanks for joining us just a couple days out from the primary.
My pleasure.
So the Democratic primary for governor in Wisconsin has gotten a lot of national attention, a lot of moving parts. Francesca Hong, Democratic Socialist candidate ahead in the polls. What do you make of her really emergence on the national scene there in Wisconsin?
The one thing that Francesca Hong has in common with Donald Trump is that she is running in a primary where there's lots of people who are very similar, and she is different. Like back in 2016 when Trump was running, it was against a bunch of governors and senators from around the country who, represented swing states. Hong is running against a bunch of folks in state government who've been endorsed by the governor and the like. But both Trump and Hong used social media to bring new voters into the fray and earn support from folks who otherwise don't pay much attention to primaries. And I think that's one of the reasons she's been able to be so successful so far.
I know a lot of people nationally look at it as kind of a litmus test of, can a DSA member or progressive candidate win in a swing state like Wisconsin? What do you believe her chances might be against the presumptive Republican nominee, Tom Tiffany?
It's really appealing to think that a moderate needs to be on the ballot to win in a state like Wisconsin, but the evidence just is totally different. And so in Wisconsin, one of our senators is Ron Johnson, who's one of the most conservative members of the U.S. Senate. The other senator is Tammy Baldwin, one of the most liberal senators in the Senate. Wisconsin has elected socialist mayors in cities like Milwaukee. Wisconsin has a long history of supporting progressive politics from Bob La Follette and the progressive left, century ago to the far right and Joe McCarthy. And so even though it's a swing state, and even though the election is going to be really close, any kind of candidate can win in the Badger State.
Yeah, Wisconsin, we think Minnesota is interesting. Wisconsin is one of the most politically fascinating states for all the reasons you just mentioned. What do you think makes it really that quintessential swing state?
You have a little bit of everything. You have big cities, but you also have rural farming areas. You have paper mills. You have vacation, industry along the lakes. There's just everything is in the state. It's sort of like a microcosm of the country in a lot of ways. It's a slightly less diverse microcosm of the country, but it's a lot like the rest of the nation. And as the Wisconsin elections go, and in presidential years, often so goes who ends up in the White House.
You mentioned something interesting, which is really your area of expertise in political communication, but just the way candidates like Francesca Hong have used social media. Do you believe those candidates are really meeting the moment of the new political climate and the new media climate? Just what are your thoughts on just how much things have changed in the last even 5-10 years?
Yeah, there's a few things happening all at once, and Hong is sort of harnessing all of them. One of the things that's happening is that people are mad at the establishment. And so even though Hong is an elected official herself, she's an anti-establishment candidate with ties to the Democratic Socialists of America. So she's got the anti-establishment thing. She also has the communication element of using social media to grow her audience, to grow her constituency in a way that other candidates haven't quite been able to do. And as more and more people cord cut, as more and more people try and avoid the news because it's stressful and uncomfortable to think about sometimes how things are. She's finding a way to pierce those bubbles and get and find people where they live, which has been really effective in the primary.
What do you think it means for voters that candidates can really bypass traditional media? They can speak directly to them. There's good and bad in that, I assume, from your vantage point.
Yeah, the good, you have an opportunity to show your authentic self, and you have an opportunity to take people behind the scenes in ways that they might not otherwise get to see in a candidate's life or on the trail. But, and here's the huge but, we don't get people like you asking hard questions and, more importantly, asking follow-up questions to candidates. How do they know the things that they say? How do we know those things are true? How do we take the things they've said in the past and square them with what they're saying now about what it is they want to do when they're in office? And so we always need an aggressive news media to ask these hard questions, and it's getting harder and harder for folks to do a good job of vetting candidates when folks can bypass them on social media and the like.
What else on Tuesday are you looking forward to watching in terms of Wisconsin primaries?
So, I think there's a few interesting House races, but really the important thing, I think, is where do the winners in the primaries for Tom Tiffany, who will win the Republican primary, and probably Francesca Hong, but maybe David Crowley or Kelder Royce on the Democratic side, is their strongest support and where are they weakest? Will Hong be weaker in areas that folks have normally had to do a good job in to win a statewide as a Democrat, or is she unexpectedly strong in more rural areas or in the suburbs surrounding Milwaukee? This will just be something that we won't know until the votes are cast.
All right, that's Mike Wagner. Thanks for coming on to talk Wisconsin politics. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Thanks for watching another episode of KARE 11 on the Record. Remember, you can catch us every Sunday morning at 6:30 a.m. on KARE 11 and streaming all day on KARE 11 Plus.